Coming. I don't need to tell you all that the climate crisis is an existential threat to all of us in San Diego and around the globe. The good news is that now we have representation on the County Board of Supervisors committed to climate action. I want to thank Vice Chair Vargas for her partnership in this effort, as well as the leadership of Board Chair Nathan Fletcher. The climate actions we are an extension of our community, an extension of you. Last year, over 1,000 people signed a petition urging the creation of this regional decarbonization and green jobs framework. Because of your organizing, including the work done by many of you here tonight, San Diego County is now the largest county in the United States to commit to zero carbon emissions by 2035. So what is a regional decarbonization framework, and why do we need it? Many cities in the region have their own climate action plan. But the problem is that those plans are only going to take us halfway to the goal of zero carbon emissions. That's where this decarbonization framework comes in. It's unique because it is not a climate action plan. When we hear about CAPs, we hear about greenhouse gas reduction targets, mobility goals, clean energy goals. It's all about how we offset or mitigate greenhouse gas emissions so things don't get worse. In other words, how do we maintain the status quo? What we're talking about today is different. What we're talking about today is a framework for our local energy production and consumption so that zero is where we're going. Not just preventing things from getting worse, but what we need to do to get to zero, full stop. This framework is not meant to be aspirational. It's meant to be practical. This framework is about feasible actions that can be implemented and implemented now. Actions that can create green jobs and help hardworking San Diegans get a foothold in the clean economy. Jobs in solar and renewable power, retrofitting buildings to increase energy efficiency and clean vehicle production. This is key. We want to prepare workers with the skills to adapt to clean industries and then help workers move into these industries, all while expanding opportunities for disadvantaged communities. But also, we know some workers will not move into green jobs because they're late in their careers or their skills are set or they would lose their. So we are also talking about phasing and sequencing to protect hardworking families. And we're talking about things like portable pensions to protect workers' benefits if they do change jobs or careers. This plan aims to create high-quality jobs and build the green infrastructure that will propel our region into the future. That's why the regional decarbonization framework is really a decarbonization strategy combined with job strategy. Why are we focusing on steps that are practical and feasible right now? Because we don't have time to wait. Globally, climate change is already causing extreme heat, historic droughts, wildfires, sea level rise, billions of dollars in property damage, and threats to public health and food security. These disasters only amplify the problems that already exist in our society. Communities of color, indigenous communities, and low-income communities are disproportionately impacted, from health to air quality to heat impacts. The climate crisis is a climate justice crisis. The fact that the people who have the least will be hurt the most is an injustice that will define our future if we fail to act. So we must match this historic challenge with historic ambition. The regional decarbonization framework will help us reach zero carbon as quickly as possible and will help achieve greater greenhouse gas reductions than the county or any other local jurisdiction could achieve on its own. Through regional collaboration that look at synergies between all the many different jurisdictions and cities and transit bodies and other government agencies in our county. Unlike climate actions plans, which treat all our cities as islands, this regional plan outlines a regional solution to our shared regional challenge. As you will see tonight, this framework shows us a path to eliminate carbon from key sectors in our region: energy, transportation, buildings, and land use. I want to thank county staff as well as our partners at UCSD and USD for all of their work and research done so far. No region in the US is doing what we're doing with this plan. Moving this ambitious agenda forward is going to take all of us organizing. The more people hear about our work, the more likely it is that we can accomplish our goals. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this. Now it is my honor to introduce my colleague and my invaluable partner and thought partner on this endeavor, Vice Chair of the County Board of Supervisors, Nora Vargas.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer. It's wonderful to be here with you today. And I also want to welcome everyone and thank you for being here tonight. As some of you may know, I was raised in Tijuana, in the Tijuana-San Diego region, and I understand the unique needs of our community. I'm a longtime resident of our binational and South Bay community, and I have personally seen the negative impacts a carbon-based economy has disproportionately had on our communities, not only from the direct pollution and causes, but also lack of opportunities for low-income and BIPOC workforce development and green economies. For 25 years, I've dedicated my life to removing barriers for underserved communities through civic engagement, public policy, and community organizing. My work has been centered in creating equity-minded policies that led to long-term solutions and transformational change. To succeed in this effort, our region needs to stop working in silos and advance more collaborations to ensure our underserved communities are prioritized for investments and good-paying jobs. A priority for me is to make sure that the county can be positioned to develop the policies we need in order to develop opportunities for green jobs and long-term economic prosperity for our communities, which is why through the updates we have been getting at our board meetings, I keep elevating this as a key component. Equity is a key consideration across all of this for all of our communities, especially those that are disproportionately impacted more than others. This is why through the new Office of Environmental and Climate Justice, we must also intentionally focus on EJ communities. Doing so will ensure that we have a lasting and sustainable solution to tackle global warming together as one region. Good paying green jobs are an essential component of sustainability, which is why it is so important to think about building talent for the jobs of the future as a pathway to begin building wealth in our communities. We know that with increased public and private investments in climate-related jobs, there will be new opportunities for low-income communities. We need to think ahead. We need to think of what skills and training we will require. And more importantly, how do we create career pathways such as apprenticeships to make these jobs accessible? Through my recent appointment to the California Resources Board, I look forward to working with CARB and the state and locally with APCD and SANDAG to ensure that our region gets the funding to not only move forward, but to also thrive, not just survive. I wanted to make sure I remind everyone that our public comment period on these components is open until the end of May, and in August, the framework will be coming to our board with approach to our implementation pathways. I'm so excited that we'll be receiving these Green Jobs Workforce Report and that the Board of Supervisors is meeting on March 16th. Muy buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a todos. Me gustaría compartir unas palabras en español. Gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros y a la supervisora Terra Lawson-Remer. Como ustedes saben, soy fronteriza y a lo largo de mi trayectoria he visto cómo las comunidades de esta región han sido impactadas por los efectos de la contaminación ambiental debido a una economía basada en el uso de los combustibles no renovables. Tengo más de 25 años trabajando en las comunidades promoviendo el acceso a salud, creando políticas públicas centradas en la equidad y el bienestar de nuestras familias. Para realmente crear un cambio, debemos trabajar juntos para asegurar que las comunidades más impactadas puedan salir adelante. Debemos promover los trabajos verdes y programas de entrenamiento y preparación para que los miembros de nuestra comunidad tengan oportunidades de tener esos trabajos. Por medio de las oficinas de justicia ambiental y climática podemos trabajar juntos. Y por medio de mis puestos en las diferentes organizaciones, ya sea CARB o APCD, me comprometo a seguir elevando sus trabajos. Estoy muy emocionada del trabajo que vamos a hacer juntos. Yo y la supervisora Lawson-Remer. Así que I'm going to turn it back to her so we can continue the program. Looking forward to the dialogue and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now it's really my pleasure to introduce our county staff who's been quarterbacking this effort, and they're going to walk us through an update of where we are so far as this plan continues to be developed, because as my colleague mentioned, we're still in the phase of developing the thoughts and ideas and doing the research, and at the point where public comment is not only encouraged but vitally necessary. There's a link that we'll be sharing of where you can comment and provide feedback on this framework. And with that, I'd like to turn it over. Is it Murtisa? Will you take it away?
Yes, I will. Thank you, supervisors. So good evening, everybody. It is so exciting to be here. I'm Murtisa Baksamusa, Program Manager for Regional Sustainability in the Land Use and Environment Group, or LUGE's Executive Office. And with me today is Elise Hansen, also from the LUGE Executive Office. Behind the scenes and to answer questions are Michael De La Rosa, Rebecca Apple, and Yasamin Rasulzadeh. This is a real page turner in terms of where we are as a county. It is my first project after joining the public sector, and to be part of sustainability effort at the county with so many large opportunities in front of us, it seems like a lifelong dream come true. Recognizing the need for a regional approach to addressing climate change, in January last year, the Board of Supervisors voted to create a regional decarbonization framework. This framework is intended to provide science-based pathways to inform policymaking in the region, county, as well as city governments, and reducing greenhouse gases across the region, across all sectors. This is going beyond climate action planning. It is separate from, but complements our climate action planning efforts by local governments. So let's start with the basics. What is decarbonization? Simply put, next slide. Simply put, decarbonization is about reducing gases in the atmosphere that trap heat. We all have felt the impacts of planet overheating in terms of prolonged and frequent extreme heat events, wildfires, and flooding. So the goal is to achieve a balance of the carbon cycle in nature, and that is our measure of success. In addition, decarbonization could have a number of health and economic benefits, such as improved air quality and high quality green jobs, which we will be exploring as well. So we want to begin with three basic guiding principles that drove this project right from the start. First, we wanted to use data-driven approach so that we can all objectively gauge where we are and where we want to be. Second, our vision would be guided by input from the public, including business, labor, environmental advocates, Native American tribes, and communities across the region. We are going to be using a broad range of both traditional as well as virtual tools for community engagement. We will be putting up the new Engage tool in the chat site shortly. And third, we are all in this together. We want to identify the additional role that the county can play in supporting and convening public agencies, cities, and regional authorities and tribal governments in order to attract state and federal resources for climate action, adaptation, and resilience. There are communities in the San Diego region that faced unjust conditions and circumstances related to the environment in which we live. We want to recognize that. Tribal nations of the San Diego region are an example of one such community that has historically faced such impact. We need to learn from our past. We would like to recognize those injustices with a land acknowledgement from our regional decarbonization framework team. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 17 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, Duegueño, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Covia. As climate change increasingly threatens the region, its people, and its cultural identities, we aspire to learn from these indigenous traditional knowledges and in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, based on the 3 principles of data, outreach, and collaboration, we derived three components of what we call an integrated framework. First, the technical report to be presented by some of the leading experts on energy modeling in the nation. Second, a workforce development study to ensure that our local workers benefit from climate investments. And third, implementation pathways. While there will be many studies, discussions, and recommendations throughout this process, actual decarbonization results will only come from implementation of policies, programs, and projects by all of us working together. Here is a timeline. We began the modeling work last summer and released an initial draft of the technical report in fall. We went to the board, took public comments, and had a technical working group provide an extensive review. We then revised the drafts in response to the comments. Now that we have the draft reports, we have an understanding of where we are as a region. We are beginning the process of implementation design. From now through August, we will continue to work on workforce development study as well as the implementation pathways. In August, as supervisors mentioned, we intend to present the integrated regional decarbonization framework with all three components that I described earlier to the board for approval. The final fully integrated framework is intended to help policymakers identify opportunities for collaboration across sectors and jurisdictional boundaries. I want to recognize the technical report team that authored the report. Was led by the University of California, San Diego School of Global Policy and Strategy, working in collaboration with the Energy Policy Initiative Center at the University of San Diego's School of Law, and other consultants with technical expertise in different sectors. I want to turn over to Elise Hansen, who was the co-author of the technical report from UC San Diego and is now managing the project on behalf of the county with the 30+ authors across the nation. Elise.
Thank you, Murtaza. As Murtaza said, I was a co-author and was able to utilize my background in ecology and in my graduate degree in public policy as a part of the larger project. I'm excited to step into this role with the county team to continue working on regional decarbonization. The framework's technical report provides quantitative pathways to decarbonization that model the entire region as a system under 4 decarbonization pathways. The technical report's analyses are based on proven technologies and on emerging best practices from across the nation and globally in the areas of buildings, transportation, electricity, and land use. These are our baseline assessments for our regional emissions. Some of the key takeaways from each of the sectors investigated by the UC San Diego technical report are as follows. First, the geospatial analysis of energy siting shows that the region has sufficient available land area for utility scale wind and solar generation to approach a fully decarbonized energy system, but that there will be trade-offs associated with large-scale regional energy generation. Second, the transportation analysis shows that projected annual emissions through mid-century under current transportation emission reduction strategies are inconsistent with the levels of reductions required under the governor's executive orders, and that there are opportunities to further reduce these emissions. Third, the buildings analysis focuses on building electrification and shows that replacing end-of-life fossil fuel heating systems with electrified systems is a near-term priority, because some heating systems will only turn over once through 2050. And fourth, the land use and natural climate solutions analysis shows that the San Diego region can effectively and inexpensively sequester and store carbon dioxide through protecting natural and working lands and avoiding land use change. Now let's take a look at the local policy analysis by EPIC, which was part of the technical report. This is the most comprehensive overview of climate action plans in the region. It is the first study of its kind that quantifies the magnitude of the challenge in achieving meaningful reductions in regional greenhouse gas emissions. It is important to emphasize that the analysis assumes that each jurisdiction acts within their authority to accomplish their commitments. This framework shows that even if all municipalities in the region did what they said they were going to do, we would fall short of our goals in reducing planet heating gases in the 4 major sectors of the San Diego region's economy. So based on EPIC's work, there are 5 high-level key takeaways. First, achieving zero greenhouse gas emissions will be difficult, regardless of whether the deadline is 2035 or closer to mid-century. Briefly, net zero greenhouse gas emissions occur when any remaining human-caused CO2 emissions are balanced by those removed from the atmosphere by human intervention. Second, local jurisdictions have legal authority to do more than they are currently doing, so authority to act is not a barrier in many cases. Third, the current total regional cap commitments do not put us on the pathway to reach our regional decarbonization goals by mid-century. This is not a statement about any individual cap, but is rather a regional view of all caps combined. EPIC assumed that all caps can reach their individual targets and that they implement all the commitments included in their caps. Fourth, the good news is that there are numerous opportunities for local jurisdictions to do more to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and there are many examples of greenhouse gas reducing policies from our region and from around California. Finally, EPIC identified numerous opportunities where regional collaboration can help to facilitate local action. Some examples of this are regional data collection and analysis on social equity, geospatial analysis to identify the best locations to plant trees, regional support for policy development, and financial incentive programs. The technical report does not comment on the structure of regional collaboration or which stakeholders would participate. Rather, the report highlights the areas where the whole may be greater than the sum of its parts. With that, I will pass it back to Marissa.
Thank you, Elise. As we mentioned in the beginning of this, we wanted the workforce component as well as the climate component to go hand in hand. So we released the draft of the workforce development study last week. It is titled Putting San Diego County on the High Road, Climate Workforce Recommendations for 2030 and 2050. It is modeled after the statewide study that was led by the same author from UC Berkeley. So what are high road jobs? The 3 principles from the state report that guide the San Diego County study are: first, that labor should be considered an investment rather than a cost. Second, policy actions by local governments, such as incentives or regulations, are necessary to advance job quality and broaden access to good jobs for workers, especially from disadvantaged communities. And third, supporting workers must go way beyond just providing funding for training or retraining individual workers, but actually investing in high quality jobs and keeping the occupations they are in. We are reading this together as the study was just released. So I wanted to give an excerpt from the study. The authors write that our approach here begins with the premise that San Diego climate policy can and should generate safe, family-sustaining career track jobs, broaden professional and economic opportunities for workers from underrepresented communities, and support workers and communities whose livelihoods depend on carbon-intensive industries at risk of decline as decarbonization proceeds. The most encouraging takeaway from this study is that we can do it as a region. There already exist feasible, field-tested workforce and economic development mechanisms that are complementary to climate policy and that can be utilized to improve outcomes for workers. Successful examples of strategies and investments to improve job quality and job access show that it is possible to design climate policy that leads to good outcomes for workers as well. Now, the employment opportunities from the climate investments are quite significant. There are 27,000 jobs projected per year during this decade, roughly half in energy demand, such as vehicles, residential retrofitting, etc., and half in energy generation, since as we electrify everything, we will need more power. These occupations include welders, machinists, electricians, carpenters, laborers, pipe layers, and a variety of other trades, as well as scientists, vehicle technicians, inspectors, office clerks, and administrative support staff. This study focuses on blue-collar and construction workers, since they are the most vulnerable and could be low wage without intentional effort. Policies on the demand side pull workers into jobs and influence the quality of jobs, such as training certifications. Policies on the supply side push workers into the jobs created, such as pre-apprenticeship programs, and can be coupled with high-road industry partnerships. In addition to recommending these strategies for the 4 sectors, inclusive economics provided recommendation for a just transition for workers employed in industries that are in a transition by looking at new and emerging economic development projects, such as waste to energy, district thermal energy, and on-site water reuse. On a closing note, regional collaboration is essential for the development of implementation pathways. Therefore, the county will convene local and regional jurisdictions, agencies, stakeholders, and build coalitions that work together to solve problems that none of us can do on our own. For example, in transportation, a regional authority to support EV charging infrastructure and take a look at EV charging needs region-wide. In buildings, a regional program to provide technical assistance and policy development to support implementation of policies to decarbonize buildings. In electricity, existing aggregation or partnerships to increase the renewable content of energy. In land use and natural climate solutions, a regional analysis to identify suitable tree planting locations in high priority areas that lead to the best public as well as environmental benefits. And common to all of this is social equity, which could benefit from regional guidance on equity element in climate action plans, regional equity indicators, as well as a regional climate equity report. We now know what needs to be done collectively, and because we collaborate well in this region, our greener future is bright. That concludes our presentation, and Elisa and I are happy to take questions. I'll turn it back to the supervisor. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much for our county team. Really appreciate all of your hard work. So now we have a couple moments, or I should say about 15 minutes for questions and answers. And a lot of these have come in through the chat. And Vice Chair Vargas, if you want to jump in, if you see any that jump out at you, or if you have questions that you particularly want to highlight, please feel free to do so at any time. So let me just start with one of the questions that was sent in ahead of time. And it said, could you please speak a little bit more about some of the key technical findings from the UCSD report? I would imagine this question should probably be towards, if not Murtaza, probably Elise.
Supervisor, we can go into the findings for each of the 4 decarbonization pathways. There are unique findings for transportation, land use, energy, and buildings. But to summarize it all, what all the different pathways are trying to do is get to the zero carbon goal. And what it shows is through all these different analysis, we can do it, but it takes a regional effort more than beyond what individual pathways will do. So the details of them are posted, and we can get back to you on each of these pathways.
Great. Let's see, moving on. It says, okay, this is a great question we were sent. How do we ensure that that this process is implemented with an equity and racial justice lens at the forefront?
Equity is a centerpiece of this. Supervisors, we're very grateful that the county has given us direction, the Board of Supervisors, to integrate equity right from the beginning. So not only are we looking at it in the analysis, because that is important, but we also want to look at it in terms of implementation. So the way we are doing integrating equity is through our own staffing. We want to give recognize the newly created Office of Environmental and Climate Justice that is going to closely work on the sustainability front in order to ensure that the pathways, the implementation pathways, have underserved communities at the table, and we prioritize the needs of those underserved communities as climate investments occur.
And I think that what I wanted to add, right, is that the existing cities and their caps don't actually have an integrated equity plan. And so I think that, you know, we ended with the last slide where this is a regional opportunity that we have. And I think when both Supervisor Terra Lawson-Remer and I are having these discussions, it is from that equity lens that we are trying to ensure that all of the work that we are doing moving forward, either on SANDAG or at APCD or at CARB, or the work that we're leading at the county, it really is from that equity lens and is based on data. And so I just want to emphasize that for us. I think it's a priority. And I think I saw Councilmember Jack Shu ask about our general plan and what does that look like as we're moving forward. And so it will be, you know, integrated as we're moving forward in the work that we are doing as well.
Thank you. Let's see, what else have I been sent? There are so many questions. Everyone has had lots and lots of great questions. This is a great one. So I think this one again is probably for Murtasa. Just to talk about more, you did begin speaking about this, but just to go back to the question of, you know, what kind of jobs do you see being created? What are some examples of the jobs that we're looking at?
I want to emphasize that we looked at workforce development in two phases: the short term and midterm through 2030, which is in this decade, and then long term through 2050. So it is, we got to make sure that the current jobs become better jobs, and at the same time anticipate how the industries are going to change, and we plan for the future. So as such, for the short term, a pipe fitter would remain a pipe fitter even through different employment opportunities such as waste to energy, district thermal energy, and on-site water reuse. As we look into the future as to what the potential new opportunities come down the pipe, such as from ocean wave energy, offshore wind energy, those are the jobs of the future that we already have the apprenticeship programs that we need to scale up to train the future workforce. So it's a two-pronged approach.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Okay, here's one. I think it's for myself and it's for my partner, Vice Chair Vargas. And it says, as our elected representatives, how do you plan on engaging with the various private sectors to drive forward the decarbonization of our economy? So I'm happy to take that first, or you can if you like. Okay, sure, I'll jump. I mean, I think that's really the point of this whole endeavor in my mind is we've now done the work and had experts, global experts, outline, you know, what it's going to take to get to zero. And I think a lot of my job is doing exactly what we're doing now, is getting people focused on the fact that there is a path, that it is possible, that there's real policy measures, we actually can take them, and doing the invest in workforce development. We have the jobs coming online, and getting folks and getting our business community in particular looking ahead at these opportunities, creating incentives to make those transitional investments, and also creating opportunities. You know, I think one of the things that we've been doing on our board is, you know, really encouraging the kind of private sector investments in energies that we're going to need, and we're going to need them at scale, and sending a really clear signal that when our private sector partners want to make those happen, we will clear the way and we will make that possible. And we're gonna really bend over backwards to be good partners in those decarbonization and renewable sector investments, and especially the ones that really do their part to create good jobs for working families. And I think we've had a number of those kinds of initiatives come before our board already. I think we're going to see that process accelerate as this moves forward. So I don't know, Vice Chair Vargas, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, and I think, and actually somebody posted it on the chat as well, right? The infrastructure bill has a lot of opportunities for all of us, and there's already work that is being done through, like for instance, for the port site SERP, right? What we are seeing right now, and there is a synergy that's taking place with the port and APCD and the work that's taking place, and ensuring that there's strategies and goals around it, and with the Navy, the port. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for us. There's grants that are coming from the federal government, and opportunities for us to work with. I spent this past weekend with the San Diego Regional Economic Development, that I serve on that board on behalf of the County of San Diego, and speaking with our business community about what does this look like as we're moving forward to ensure that that good jobs are available for our communities, but more importantly, that as the transition is happening, that no one is left behind, right? With these jobs. And so I think it's prioritizing, it's making sure that we're at the table and having these discussions, and that the community is at the table as well when we're having these discussions, is what we need to do. And as a former trustee for a community college, for me, it's extremely important that our community colleges are at the table. They have been leading the way in these new job, these green jobs and new technology. And so I think that as we continue to move forward and identify the jobs of the future and the transition of these new jobs, they have to be helping us as we discover what it looks like. And so I think we in San Diego County are positioned well, so that we can continue to have those partnerships and ensure that our communities have the jobs that they deserve.
Thank you. I see another question. I think, and this is for probably for Murtasa in the chat. It just asks for sort of more thought, more explanation of some of the opportunities we envision for retired journeymen, trade people to train in new skills.
Sorry, the question is about retired journeymen, or those that it's about retired?
It said retired,
journeymen?
but I think you might as well go ahead and ask it kind of answered more broadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're in terms of when I was describing that a pipe fitter should remain, especially when they've gotten 20 years of experience or 30 years sometimes, and nearing their retirement, that we can't be really telling somebody to switch jobs or learn a new skill at that point. Occupationally, from now until 2030, we shouldn't be seeing much of a change. Where the way we modeled it is we went back and forth between the UC Berkeley researchers and the UC San Diego researchers to ensure that the pathways were smooth enough that there were no drastic losses of employment, and that if there was a transition, it was matched with the rate of attrition, which is the rate of retirement, so that there were no major job losses during the sector. So in terms of any kind of retirement, it's really built in that we can do it. This is San Diego. We don't have, for example, huge oil rigs or anything that is coal mining, for example, those kind of jobs that sometimes disrupts the economy in other places. We have a very mature clean energy research industry, biotech industry. The biotech industry itself can essentially absorb some of the growth in new jobs. We also have a very burgeoning industry, a geothermal sector in just east of us in Imperial Valley. So with the new resources coming on, there is a potential for journeymen or journey persons from San Diego to be able to work on Southern California jobs. We want to make sure that nobody is hurt by this decarbonization process, because we can plan for it. If there was a climate emergency and disruption did occur and there were shutdowns, those things are unplanned, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Great, thank you. Let's see, but there's so many coming. I want to try to get everyone's questions. Okay, here's an interesting one. What are the main areas of concern or challenges that we foresee? So I'll take it. I'll take that. I mean, I think there is a real challenge of, I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but one of them I definitely think is a challenge of regional collaboration. You know, this is a challenge that we said, look, you know, there's people who live in Chula Vista and work in Sereno Valley, and you know, we are economy. We're not just city by city. And so that is our plan. It takes a regional approach, and it looks at how do we really get to zero, taking account all of our jurisdictions, but we don't really have a coordinating mechanism to kind of enforce those kinds of moves simultaneously. So, you know, I have great confidence in my fellow board members on the county. I think I have wonderful partners, and I think we're going to definitely be doing our part at the county, but we only have jurisdiction over, you know, a piece of region, and only some of the levers. And so a lot of the levers are not under the county's control, and are going to require action by SANDAG and by MTS and by all of our different cities, and some of our different cities might not really be on board on this. And so that is what I see. I mean, I think there's, I said, like many challenges, but I think that to me feels like one of the most significant ones. But I will say, I think one of the things I find so hopeful about this report is that so often when I think we have these conversations about what do we do about the climate crisis, a lot of times people just throw up their hands. They say, oh my God, it's impossible. We have no way of getting there. It's too difficult. How are we ever going to decarbonize our economy? And so now we know it's quite possible, right? I mean, I think that's what's so compelling, is that yes, there's a lot of details and there's a lot of challenges, and there's all these different specific targets and all these specific sectors, and it is a mammoth beast of like a set of steps we have to take, but they're not pie in the sky. They're real things that we can do today and tomorrow that move us forward. They're not imaginary. And that to me is very heartening. You know, we're not looking at how do we don't need I don't know, some kind of nuclear fission, right, to solve this climate crisis. Like, we have the tools, we know what those tools, we have the tools, and we know what the tools are. And so now we just have to kind of figure out how to get ourselves organized so that we can act together in concert. And so I think that the fact that our biggest challenge is one of regional coordination, to me, is actually quite heartening, because I would much rather have a problem of figuring out how to get the county and, you know, our cities and to cooperate, rather than having a problem of not even having the tools or a path that even exists. So at least we know it exists. Whether we're able to implement it or not, to be honest, I think is going to fall a lot to the folks on this call. Like I said, I think I have some very good partners on my board. I think we're going to be doing our part, but it's going to take a lot of organizing and a lot of advocacy and a lot of outreach to all the other cities and all the other jurisdictions, so that we can move in concert. So that is my thought on the biggest challenge I think we face. Would love to hear, though, from my colleagues.
I would add, Supervisor, that I think we're in a very unique moment in time, right? I mean, just yesterday, we were able to host the first meeting between the Air Pollution Control District and SANDAG to talk about social equity and air quality, right? That had never been heard of in the county of San Diego, and that would have never happened if it would not been for legislation that made APCD independent from the county of San Diego, so that we can have these discussions, and you can have a committee that actually now is looking at air pollution and has representation from members of the community, experts in healthcare, environment, et cetera, et cetera. And SANDAG understands the importance of ensuring that the intersectionality of these two agencies in a formal and public way to come together and really be transparent and think about how we work together is critical for the future of the communities. And that had never happened before, right? And so I think that we're moving at a faster pace. The changes have taken place in our communities. And I think we're being very thoughtful as leaders about knowing that we're limited in our amount of time and how quickly we need to achieve these goals. At CARB, we're really looking at how to, we most recently made sure that our border region, San Diego and Otay, are officially now communities of concern. We were able to allocate, $900,000, not a lot of money, but it's a good chunk of money to be able to have education when it comes to air pollution and other education around our communities, particularly around, the conversation that we're not having today that we should be able to have, as well as we're trying to meet our decarbonization goals, is the impact of the border region, right? What does that look like? And how do we make sure we're integrating into the solutions of our binational workforce? And what does that look like as well? And so I think that all of us are really looking at different perspectives into how to achieve our ultimate goal, which is ensuring that we meet our overall, have our healthy communities and that everybody is able to live in in a healthy, state in California. And I am much more hopeful than I was, a couple of years ago. And I think that people are actually not just talking about it, but we're actually being very action oriented about it. So I think that there are more opportunities right now for all of us to work together.
Here's an interesting question. Does the situation in Russia and Ukraine create more momentum and need to move this initiative forward? I'm happy to answer that, Vice Chair Vargas, if you have thoughts.
No, gas is more expensive now, so.
Yeah, no, I have a similar, to me, that's right. I think the idea that we as a community and a society depend on being in the good graces of Russian oligarchs it frankly underscores that this is not just about climate, which should be enough, but is also about our economy and the stability of our economy. It's about our security and energy, and decarbonization is also energy independence. At the end of the day, if we are able to put microgrids and solar panels on schools and hospitals and the county building, we're going to be importing a lot less oil from Russia, and we're going to be in a much better state as we build up EV charging stations and help folks who maybe don't have access to money buy those electric vehicles so that they can also share in some of those benefits, and really think in an equity forward way about creating more opportunities. I think that we're going to be in a better position, when in these kinds of global geopolitical contests as well. So certainly not something that was on my mind in January last year when we started working on this, but I definitely think it underscores the urgency. Okay, I think we probably have time for one more question and then a couple closing remarks. So we'll do a go around of all four of us. It's what parts of the regional decarbonization and green jobs plan are you most excited about? So why don't I start with Murtaza, then Elise, then Vice Chair Vargas, and myself.
Yes, I'm most excited about the workforce. No surprises there. What I want to say is that climate and workforce needs can work hand in hand, and what this report has shown is there is a lot of hope and a lot of positive energy in building that partnership and the relationships that we need to achieve between investment, community, business, labor, working together with the government in order to basically establish us competitively as a region in order to get us to a greener future. So I'm very hopeful about that.
Thank you. Elise, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very excited about the Natural Climate Solutions chapter, perhaps unsurprisingly. And I feel very hopeful that as a region, we can collaborate and protect and enhance the natural carbon sequestration in our very unique and very biodiverse region and integrate it with social equity and justice and moving forward as a region to decarbonize as a whole.
Great. Vice Chair Vargas?
Well, I just really appreciate the opportunity to create this framework, and that I really believe that the foundation that we are creating to really reach our decarbonization goals is so important. And I'm really pleased that we're really looking at the importance of committing to environmental justice and how it's linked to economic development potential, because there's always been this tension of that you can always have one or the other. And I want to make sure that we're leading the way and demonstrating that it doesn't have to be that way. But I also just want to take a minute to say thank you to county staff again, and our land use and environmental group, and particularly to Murta staff for leading this effort. I want to also thank Dr. Carol Sabin from UC Berkeley and Bethany Jones from Inclusive Economics for presenting all this information. It's just really, I think it's really, really important, and I'm really looking forward to continue working with you, Supervisor, on this, and to our colleagues on our work. I know there's a lot of work for us to do as well, but to you and our community members for joining us today, I'm just really grateful.
Well, I appreciate all of your leadership on this, and I think that's a really great transition to next steps. So, Mark, do you want to put up in the screen the next step slide? Great. So we're now March 9th. So you've already done checkbox 1, which has come to the workshop, the forum. So March 16th, we're going to have the Board of Supervisors meeting, which is an opportunity to see the plan that's been developed so far. Most of it's the technical analysis, and to submit an e-comment or engage on in any way on providing your feedback on the shape of this plan as it's beginning to emerge. And then if you can make it on the 16th, the other opportunity would be to come on March 24th, which would be to attend the county's community meeting for a more detailed overview and status of the project. And again, another opportunity to provide input. And I just also want to remind everyone, I put it in the chat a couple times, but if you can't attend either of these, and I certainly hope you do, but if you cannot, if you could take the time to go on the website that actually has the draft of the various technical papers and reports and allows you to put comments directly in them. It's a pretty cool tool, I have to say, a lot of fun, and I think is going to be a really important way for us to have an interactive dialogue where community members are really able to have a voice in shaping the outcome of this report, even if you can't be there in person at a meeting. So with that said, I just really want to thank everyone for being here and for all of your hard work, and thank all of our hosts and our staff, Chair Vargas's office and my own staff, for all your work in putting together this forum, the county staff for all your work on everything with moving this incredibly impressive project forward. I want to thank UCSD and the researchers at USD and EPIC, and really nationwide, and in all of their work to contribute to a greener, more prosperous San Diego County. And thank you all for all that you do. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Vice Chair Vargas, for your leadership and your partnership.
Thank you.